seen done with Star Wars for the better part of the last 10 years. Now, I know it was included with the Disney Infinity 3.0 video game release on PS4 and Xbox One. That was to be expected, tying with Marvel and Disney characters. That was a pretty interesting concept. And now off of that, we have Star Wars The Force Awakens, which had months of advertising. So much anticipation went with this one, and it was blown out of the water. Everybody going to see this one, even if you weren't a Star Wars fan. I bet you found yourself at the premiere of Star Wars with probably a diehard Star Wars fan in your family. There was always somebody who you knew who was a Star Wars fan. I know a lot of people who are diehard fans of Star Wars. I can remember the original episode movies that were released back when I was in elementary school, and even teachers that used to teach in the computer lab were diehard fans of Star Wars, and they used to go see the episode movies. I was not someone who made a habit of going and seeing these movies, that nor Harry Potter I was ever a fan of. I can't ever remember being a fan of things like Star Wars or Harry Potter or James Bond. But I remember how much it was blown out of promotion and how much people actually put this movie series over, no matter what series you were talking about, from Star Wars to Harry Potter. Everybody was a fan of one or the other, and it was just amazing hearing about it all the time and just how much popularity this movie had received. But I was always a fan when you talk about Star Wars villains. I think one of the people that stood out in the Star Wars series the most to me was always Darth Vader, and I don't know why they threw in Kyle Ren. Probably to change things up a little bit and make it different, kind of express a bit of differentiality in the Star Wars series. I think one of the characters that always stood out to me was either Darth Vader, or if I had to go a step further into the series, it was always Yoda, because he was always referred to as a legendary Star Wars icon, and without a doubt he was. But that's why I was kind of finding it hard to kind of readjust from Darth Vader all these years and how he was supposed to have been Luke Skywalker's father, all the way from that to Kyle Ren. How did we end up at point A and go all the way to point Z with Kyle Ren? After all these years, that's what Star Wars had amounted to. So if there was one thing you could kind of review critically, it was probably implementing Kyle Ren so late into the series. Was it too late to be introducing a new Star Wars villain and some new Star Wars characters? I think to some extent it probably was a little bit too late when you're looking at the introduction of either Star Wars heroes or villains, especially Kyle Ren and the BB-8 android being tied into Star Wars so late in the series. Probably he should have came in a couple of years prior to Star Wars The Force Awakens being released in Disney, purchasing the license eventually to do stuff with their Disney Infinity video game and some upcoming Star Wars theatrical releases in the future. Probably the introduction of these villains and some of these heroes probably can receive a fair share of criticism, because the original characters is obviously what made Star Wars. Again, you know, you compare the two sci-fi series, either Star Wars or Star Trek, and Star Wars always found a way of coming out on top and being far more superior than Star Trek. But the thing was, they had the diehard fans out there, the fan base, that continuously found time in promoting it and putting it over, which deservingly so and justifiably always put Star Wars over, and along with the merchandise too. It was amazing. Just hearing the responses this movie received, falling nothing short of amazing, and I came away nothing but impressed of this movie, which is why I'm looking forward to a very promising future for Star Wars, based off the millions of people that actually went to the premiere. It made news headlines on different news networks and different radio stations, everybody talking about it, having some sort of sweepstakes for Star Wars, some sort of giveaway promoting it. Star Wars merchandise really blowing up in the holiday season. As I just mentioned, this BB-8 android, what's really cool about the BB-8 android is the fact you can control it with your phone, and it actually responds with phones and mobile devices, different mobile devices. An android, the first of its kind, and the $25,000 lightsaber Luke Skywalker and Han Solo action figures because of the value of these characters. Can you imagine selling a Star Wars action figure of any prototype for over $25,000? That's what people were doing with their original Luke Skywalker and Han Solo action figures. $25,000. That's a bit of pocket cash for the holidays, don't you think? And I think that this is just amazing how many diehard fans of Star Wars we have out there. I think it's safe to say that if not for these diehard fans, this fan base that Star Wars has accumulated and the response that it's received, along with the response tying in very significantly, without the diehard fans out there, Star Wars probably never would have amounted to the franchise that it is today, with the unbelievable popularity, which is absolutely unparalleled to anything that I've ever seen before. Just mentioning some of the franchises that come to mind: Harry Potter, the Lord of the Rings. These franchises were nothing in comparison to Star Wars, which always came out on top. But when you compare things like James Bond, Harry Potter, and the Lord of the Rings to something like Star Wars, it was always out on top. If you had a top 5 list of top franchises for the last 10 through 15 years, it was always Star Wars or Star Trek that always came out on top, and deservingly so, because of people like Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Yoda, Kyle Ren in the new series. Don't know how he's going to play in significantly with the Star Wars series over the next couple of releases that are going to be released by the Walt Disney Company, starting with Episode 8. But it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of numbers this one receives. Along with the DVD and Blu-ray high-definition releases of this one, the numbers of the DVD and Blu-ray are going to be really high by February or March of 2016. It's going to be one of the initial DVD and Blu-ray high-def releases of 2016 in the new year, and the numbers are going to be up in the millions for the DVD and Blu-ray releases, whatever aspect of the release that you're talking about, either DVD or Blu-ray, with the special features, of course, 5 times the typical storage space of a traditional DVD, which means more space for more cool content, which is going to be really exciting to see the numbers of the DVD and Blu-ray of this one. But I think Star Wars definitely living up to the reputation that it's had for years and the expectations of everybody out there who thought they were going to have to review this one very critically. And I'm sure there are a lot of people probably listening to this who may have come across it on YouTube.com who thought that I was going to jump down the throats of the creators of Star Wars. But how can you find time in jumping down the throats of the creators of the Star Wars franchise and the expansion of Star Wars The Force Awakens for the incredible amount of detail that went into it? Absolutely incredible. The fans of Star Wars not going anywhere, staying with Star Wars for forever. And upon the announcement of Star Wars The Force Awakens, everybody was really excited. I remember one of the first sneak peeks that I actually got at the trailer for Star Wars The Force Awakens. I included it on my Facebook page and Twitter. I tweeted it out at Jonathan Clarke 1 and included it for Cheap Shots from HCW Entertainment, Jonathan Clarke's Google video blog, which I include a video blog on every couple of weeks. And I remember throwing it out there after seeing it for the first time, and my initial reaction was, this is absolutely incredible. I think it had a lot to do with the visuals and the significant update in the graphics and just the presentation of the movie from about 15 years ago. I mean, it's a huge advancement you're talking about when you're talking about an original Star Wars episode movie from what we've come into. We've come all the way from the original episode movies into Star Wars The Force Awakens. And things have really changed up and changed the complexity of Star Wars and the way that people have looked at it for years. And I think it had a lot to do with some of the first sneak peeks that were released of the original Star Wars movie, along with some of the newer characters that people were being introduced to for the first time ever. Along with that, also, we have a lot of animation being picked up for Star Wars, not just the Star Wars franchise, but the Star Wars Lego franchise being picked up by Disney, of course, for a new animated series on Disney XD. Disney XD doing a lot with Star Wars, of course, the Lego Star Wars, and some new animated series focusing on Star Wars characters are going to be released over time. So Disney XD doing a lot with Star Wars. So the promotion really has been kicked into an entirely different gear from what we've seen Star Wars having done with it for years. So there's a lot playing into the response that Star Wars has gotten along with these great reviews, which was to be expected. This fell nothing short of amazing for me, and it is one that I would recommend to anybody who was ever a diehard fan of Star Wars, along with the live-action Star Wars that are being released. The animation is really there too with Disney XD, of course, just relaunching back on December 1st with some new Star Wars series, including a Lego Star Wars series, taking a look at Star Wars in a way that it's never been looked at before. I think you can easily get away with 5 out of 5 stars. That's what I'm rating this one. You may occur with my review of Star Wars, or you may disagree on occur with my review of Star Wars. I'm going all the way 5 out of 5 stars. It may be jumping the proverbial fence and or gun by giving it a 5 out of 5 star rating, but I'm going to throw it out there. Do you agree with it kind of occur with my review of Star Wars by going 5 out of 5 stars and going all the way, or do you think you should go a step lower and probably rate it maybe 4 or 3 out of 5 stars rather than going all the way 5 out of 5 like I initially decided to do based off the popularity of Star Wars, which is really a driving force behind my 5 out of 5 full star rating on a 5-star scale perspective rating when you're talking about the popularity of Star Wars. That's basically what it's based off for me, but, you know, some people may feel different, but I really appreciate the diversity in the way of responses that Star Wars has received. I know there are people who have found time in criticizing Star Wars, and that was to be expected because this was the first Star Wars movie in years, and people believed that this Star Wars movie was not going to live up to the expectations or the hype that a lot of people believed that it was going to, because we had original Star Wars fans who were there from the get-go, of course, who remember the original Star Wars movie. I actually have the entire collection of the original Star Wars movies, and if you watch the throwback Star Wars movies, which are still being aired on movie networks and different TV stations all the time over the years, the interesting thing about Star Wars is more people will prefer the original Star Wars movies from the newer Star Wars movies because of just the feel that's presented with them. And as I just mentioned, you know, I have the original collection of Star Wars movies, so you can understand where I'm coming from if I found time in criticizing this movie, but it would almost be instant if we chose to criticize this movie and never give it the benefit of the doubt. I think it's going to take time, and that's really what you have to allow for the newer, updated Star Wars movies with the new characters and the new heroes and the new look for Yoda and the new look for Darth Vader and how they tie into these new movies after years, after having seen them as a part of the original Star Wars franchise for years, and how many fans we had of the original episode movies back when I was in elementary school. The thing is that has to be allowed for this is time, and I think time will definitely play a critical role in where we go from here and where we're going to be and where we're going to see ourselves being with Star Wars maybe 4 or 5 years from now. It's going to be really exciting to see. Exciting times are upon us for fans of Star Wars and where we're going to go. Are we going to get from point A to point C very smoothly, or will more people